All right. Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of The Foster Effect, where we have conversations around awareness, hope, and resources in the foster care space. I'm John, your host, and have an amazing privilege to bring in our co-host now, Jennifer Gallahar, in the house.
Yay.
Jenny. Got the big G in the back there.
That's right.
That's right. We got a little country in one corner
That's
and
right.
a little upstate New Yorker in the other. But today we're going to be talking about the big questions to ask for your family and also for the caseworker when you are going to bring in a kiddo into your home. This was really interesting. Actually, Jen and I were talking a couple of different times because in the context that we're in with the nonprofit that we run called the Bridge House, we provide transitional housing for kids in foster care, transitional housing for kids aging out of foster care. And we come across a lot of families that are interested in fostering with the events that we speak at or just through conversation with different churches at our events. And a lot of times they're asking us, man, where do we get started? And I think a lot of times when you and I have been talking, Jen, we were going back and forth about what questions we really should be asking before we say and put our yes on the table for a kid to come into our home. And so why don't we start kind of just with maybe your own personal family, because you've been a foster parent for quite a while, and maybe bring us into the conversation that you even have with your own family before you even started fostering, like way back when, because you guys have been fostering like for a while.
Yeah. I think this is I think we're coming up on year 8. And so
Yeah, wow.
my husband and I, along with our 3 biological children, and we started fostering, let's see, Bo was like 3. Yeah, he's 3. My kids now, so my youngest was 3 when we started fostering, and now we have 10, 12, and a 19-year-old
Wow.
biological children. Yeah, lots of questions. And I think really I'll preface by saying, I'm not by any means an expert. I don't know
Yeah,
that
you are.
anyone really is, but
She is. Oh,
but
listen,
this
she's
is just
being humble.
wisdom I think that people have, passed down to me before we got started, and just has been really important to us and our family on this journey, and really just want to share that and encourage someone else who's considering fostering, because it is not just a one. Yes, it is your entire family. So I think it's really important
Mhm.
for everyone to be on the same page. And that is one of the things I'll go into with our family. If one person, like, we have a conversation, our entire family, and if one person says no, it's a no. Like, we have to be in unison with our family. And so really want that yes to be a family yes, and know that it's a good fit for our family. And I think it's important to have conversations with your family ahead of time, because one, if you're even considering fostering, I feel like you already have a servant heart. And when you see a need, you just automatically want to say yes. But if you're having these conversations, if someone knocked on your door and was like, hey, here's this kiddo, they don't have a home, you're automatically going to be like, yeah, I want to help. But
Right,
is
right.
that your best yes? So I think it's important to know ahead of time what can our family, but also leave room for God to move. I
Mhm.
think there are things that we said initially that we would not be willing to accept in our home. And I think we prayed, and the Lord actually shifted, and we did that, and he was with us in that. So I think
Mm,
knowing that, but also leaving room for God to move in your
yeah.
family.
Yeah. Now, when you have like, I know, I've had the privilege of getting to know your husband and your kids quite well.
Yeah.
And so when what's that conversation look like? You all around the table and you're like, all right, so we're thinking about bringing in a
Yeah.
kiddo into our home. And have you ever had one of them be like, nope, we're not doing that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I
And
need
it's
more
so hard
attention. Don't bring
because
another kid in, mom.
yes, my husband actually just did it recently because, we
Oh
just
God.
had 2 of the littles at the bridge house, and I'm like, "Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, my heart hurts." Like, I hate it when it's little kids that are in transitional
Yeah.
housing,
Yeah.
and my husband's like, "No."
Yeah.
We are at capacity. I'm
You're at
like,
capacity,
we
right?
are, because we've all, and I think it goes back to those questions that even though your heart is moved for the kids,
Yeah.
it does go back to, we've already had that conversation like 4. is enough. I mean, we do medically
Mhm.
fragile. I'm a nurse by trade,
Mm.
so we do medically fragile kids. Personally, I mean, we have lots of
Mhm.
therapy, lots of
Yeah.
appointments. It's
Oh,
hard
yeah,
to
it's
do
brutal.
it
Yeah.
and do it well. And so really we are at capacity. So even though I'm like, "Oh, my heart," my husband's
Yeah.
like, "No."
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we have
I did the exact opposite of what you're recommending when my wife and I were we brought multiple kids into our home, and I don't think, there was ever a point that either of us really asked each other. It was like I came home and it was like, boom, there's a kiddo in our home, and my wife's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Oh my
yeah,
goodness, hey, we got a new
yeah,
friend," and they were actually more teenagers that we would take in, and then there was a time that I brought in, a little one, and didn't talk to my wife, and we were like it was kind of through text messages, and she's like, "Yeah, sure, let's help her out." And next thing you know, it's like, no family decisions, no conversations, just
yes.
jumping in, and I look back and I'm like, "Oh, I wish I would've taken more time to really allow my family to speak into that because it we would have solved a lot of problems later
Yeah,
if we would have all
yeah,
been on the same page with it." Now God worked it all out and, they were great experiences,
yeah,
and came with their own set of wins and challenges. But I can see the wisdom of getting everyone around the table, maybe slowing down. Usually, a fast answer
yeah,
is a wrong answer, and so just
yeah.
taking time to have conversations around that for sure. Um,
Yeah, and
so when you're, yeah, jump in,
I think we
cut me
feel
off,
too
shut up,
sometimes.
John.
No, sorry. I feel like too, there's this pressure to meet the need, and sometimes when the call comes in, you feel this pressure, like, "I have to say yes
Mm,
right now, or this kid's gonna go into another home," but isn't that the goal? Like, we want them in
mm,
a home, and
yeah,
if God intends for that kid to be in our home, He will make it happen. So I really had to tell myself, like, I can slow down and have a conversation with my family and say, "Hey, I'll call you back." And if the kid has in, you know, that time span has passed and the kid is placed in another home, then it wasn't meant to be. Like the God
mm,
put him or her where they were supposed to be, and I don't have to move so quick to give a yes that maybe is not always the best yes.
yeah. No, that's great. Now, what do you do? So this is one thing that we've seen regularly as well too. You're thinking of bringing a kiddo into your home. Maybe you've already been through your home study, you've already done the things, and maybe you have fostered before and you haven't done what Jen's suggesting that you do. Obviously, you can start doing that right
Yeah.
out of the gate when you bring in another kiddo. And a huge shout out to all our foster families out there if you're listening or people that are
Yeah.
considering. I mean, dude, you guys are heroes. So thankful for you, and the kids that you're bringing in are heroes as well too. So we're just a bunch. It's a household of heroes in that place. But I want to just say this, like one of the things that we see regularly is because DCS is so inundated with so many cases. I mean, the amount of kids that they have on their
Yeah.
caseload. You have DCS, you have various different other organizations that are trying to place children round the clock, 24/7. And it can be somewhat, like you said, of like an urgency of like, oh, we got to place kids, we got to place kids. And you can get caught up into just putting your yes on the table and kind of hoping for the
Yeah.
best and then end up finding out later like, "Oh my goodness, there were so many questions that I didn't ask, and I wasn't able to really know what this child needed before they came into our home." And what would you what type of questions would you recommend people ask DCS before they bring a child into their home?
Yeah. So there's always the obvious. You need to know gender, age. A big one is location. Where is that kid located from? So even though you may be in Sumner County, Wilson County, you may be getting calls from Montgomery County. So it's important to know the location because those are places that you would be expected to travel for court and maybe even visits if or at least meet halfway. So those are important to know ahead of time. Are you logistically able to meet those needs and travel for court appointments, things like that? Um, Gender, age, location, I try to keep some notes. Obviously, medical diagnosis,
Mm,
that tells you appointments that you're gonna have. Medication, that's a big one.
mhm,
You need to know what kind of medication these kiddos are on, any behaviors that they have. School, are they in daycare? Where are they enrolled in school? Can you keep the kid in their current school? And that's a good question too, because sometimes there'll even be court orders to where they want the kid to stay in the same school.
Mm,
And I'll say this too, sometimes the people on the other end of the call don't know those answers, but they can try to find out. So I feel like a lot of times foster parents may get frustrated with, it used to be DCS making the call. Now it's kind of network development is who does those placement
mhm,
calls. And they don't always know the answer. So sometimes it's not that they're withholding information, they just don't know. If a kid's just came into care, maybe their parents are not in a place where they can give information, or maybe parents haven't been located yet. They may not have all of the details, but the more details that you have, the better. And I
mm,
think too, those behavior questions are important to know ahead of time. Those are the things that you need to know. What are you willing to take a child who is medically fragile? Are you willing to take a child who is homosexual? Are you willing to take a child that may be transgender? These are things that you need to know ahead of time what works for your family. Are you willing to take a kid from a different cultural background or religious background from you?
mhm.
Because those are important for both you and the kid. And it's better to know that up front than to get involved with something and then later have to disrupt and maybe cause more trauma for the kid.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. The really the reality of what we're trying to solve through this conversation is that disruption. Is that, what
Mhm.
is it, like 50% of foster families that foster the first time usually disrupt or stop fostering altogether? Is that right? Or am I missing that?
No, that's right.
Yeah. So with that said, like if you have half the amount of foster families that you already need in
Mhm.
the state of Tennessee, and then you have ones that you're onboarding and you're not asking the right questions in the beginning, and you already have a kid who is transitioned multiple times potentially, and this is coming into a new home again, and the foster family's not asking the right questions, they end up with a child that maybe there was a lot that wasn't disclosed. Again, to your point, like not that network development was trying to withhold the information, but maybe they just didn't know. And maybe just because you didn't ask, it wasn't shared. And then
Yeah.
you find out some things that just are in no way healthy for your family or for that child. And I would even say as well, too, it's not that we're just trying to do like what's in the best interest of our families for this child. It's really like what you're trying to do for the best interest of this child. So of course you're already going to be in protector mode of your own family. That's normal. We're all going to experience those thoughts, and you should. But the other side of that is that you want to be a good host to this child as well too.
Mhm.
You want to be able to love them well, steward them well, honor them well. And if you don't know their story and you don't know what you don't know, then you're not going to be able to serve them well. And so I
Yes.
totally love the idea of having a set of questions, because you actually have like questions that you like write down that you ask them, and some of them you already asked. Is there any others that maybe you haven't shared that you
Yeah.
do? And I know maybe some of these people might be like, hear this, and this is not against that we're trying to be like rude to DCS. Please know that we have great friends in DCS, and we love them dearly, and they work very hard. Some of the most amazing people I've ever met. So this isn't again that we're trying to be rude to them. It's really just trying to be able to steward these relationships well.
Yeah. And I think too, it's important. A lot of ours, because we are medically fragile, a lot of the questions that we ask ahead of time are those medical questions. Would you
Hmm.
take a child who has autism or cerebral palsy or those kinds of things? What are we as a family? And again, it is not for us. Could we do that?
Hmm.
Absolutely. Would it strain our maybe some of them would, and I'll just give an example too. So, there was a kid that we had a call about that was actually um, I can't remember the type of cancer, but the child had cancer.
Hmm.
Could we take a child that had cancer? Absolutely, would love to do that and see him through that journey. However, I have young kids who are in school and I work and we have lots of germs and we're around a lot of kids. So, is that what's best for the
Mm,
kid? Or would it be better for that kid who's going through chemo to be in a home where there are no other kids who are in school so that he can thrive and not be exposed as much as he would be in our home? So we did say no, not because we can't do it and it wasn't best for our family, but it wasn't best for him in that situation. And so
yeah.
those are things that you need to know. And again, not just looking at your family, but what's best for the kids. We've taken a kid into our home who did have a lot of sensory needs. He was had autism, cerebral palsy. He did have those things, and my kids are very active in ball, and being in the gym and all that noise was so overwhelming for him. I mean, it
Mm,
broke my heart every time. Was it a strain on our family? Yes, but for him, it was so, so hard and it was so difficult, and the
mm,
Lord was with us, and we were he saw us through that situation, but I think it's in those moments that you realize, okay, maybe now we need to pivot and know these ask these things ahead of time so that we don't do something that maybe is not best for us or the kids. So, medical needs, those are big ones, and here's the thing too, if there are reunification is almost always the number one goal of the department. Not to say it can't shift, but
mhm,
there are things that maybe you cannot personally support reunification. You need to know that ahead of time. Like, if they're working towards reunification and this kid came in for a reason that you really can't be on board and support the parents, you need to know that and
yeah.
not get involved.
Yeah, because 'cause you're not just fostering the child, you're fostering their family too.
Yes, absolutely.
Which people
And then
don't
I
think about
actually had
that.
it's so true. I actually have a list. I had, someone from our agency send over the list too, and this is the list. So you can have your own personal list in your home, but you're also gonna get a list when you go through your home study so that the department knows. So sometimes when you give them this information, they're not that they're not always they may try if they've knocked on every door and got a no, they may still call, but I think, this kinda lets them weed you out and not call you with some things that they know you're not able to take,
Yeah,
but one, they ask about infants and toddlers, elementary school age children, adolescents, or are you willing to take any age? Emotionally disturbed, minor behavior problems, major behavior problems, medically fragile, homosexual youth, different cultural backgrounds, different ethnicity, mentally challenged children, legal risk infants. That means those kids are parental rights have already been terminated, so they would be
mhm,
adoptable. So that's what legal
yeah,
risk. Sometimes that sounds scary, but that's what that means. Large sibling groups, which is a huge one, or delinquent youth, like they have some pending charges. Those are things too that you would let your agency know ahead of time. And I did ask their biggest need right now is that 12 to 17 age group, which we see at the Bridge House too. Those are the large amount
yeah,
of kids that we see there waiting for a foster home, but that 12 to 17 group.
yeah. Well, that's really good. Um, so practically, we're talking about like, okay, you guys went through your study first time, maybe you went through the study and you get the call. You're gonna first when you get the call, you're asking these series of questions. And once you go through those series of questions, some of those that you already listed as far as like medical care, medication, where they're at geographically, obviously their background as far as behavioral issues, mental health issues, sexual orientation, on and on and on.
Sexual behaviors, that's
Sexual
a big one.
behavior, yeah, religion, spiritual care, and then really at that point when you're kind of gathering some of those questions, you're going back to your family and you're having a discussion together. Hey, we got a call for this kiddo, and this is kind of the journey they're on. How do we all feel about this? And then from there, if there's peace, you feel in unity with it together, then you can call back and you can make that
Yeah,
connection to move
yeah,
forward. Is there anything
yeah.
else that you feel like we didn't talk about that we should ask or
Yeah, I would say the big one is, and we just kinda hit it a little bit, but the sexual, um abuse, sexually reactive behaviors. And again, it's not necessarily that it's a yes or no, but two, you need to know, can you keep this child safe
Mhm.
in your home? And can you keep your other children safe in your home? When kids have experienced sexual abuse, they can sometimes, react sexually. So you need to know that you can keep them safe and keep the other kids in your home safe. So that's a big one too that you would need to ask. Location, parents' involvement. Sometimes
Mhm.
kiddos may have been left at the hospital and there is no family involvement. Not that they can't reappear, but I think that gives you kind of a little clarity to what the case may look like. And also family members, like, have you already looked for other family members? Is there any potential family members? You don't want to
Mm.
get into a situation where you've had a child in your home for a year or even 6 months. There's a bond
Mm.
there, and then all of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
sudden they start looking for family when really you need to know up front, have you
Right.
already exhausted those options?
Yeah, and I know you can't speak a whole lot to this because 'cause you're currently fostering, but I'll share my story because 'cause I'm not in that
Yeah.
situation at the moment. So when we say when you foster the kid, you're fostering their family too, you really are. So and I didn't really think a whole lot about that when we started fostering. So when we started fostering, we had a young girl come in, mom and dad were separated, dad was incarcerated, mom was at home with her sisters, and then sisters eventually ended up being in foster care as well too. And so, we lived probably about 35 minutes from where she went to school and then also where her family was and visitations and things like that. And between the driving back and forth between the pickups and school, and then also just with like the level of involvement that we had to have with that family as well too, to really foster that young child well was tremendous. I mean, obviously they're not in they're not in their home. We're not their biological parents, even though those parents may have hurt them or have, been deemed temporarily unavailable by the state to be able to be their parent. They still see them as mom and dad, and they want to be near them. They wanna spend time with them, and so visitations were big. And so when you think of your weekend or when you're going to be maybe normally doing things with your own family, ball games, these type of things, it's like, hey, we have a visitation this week. And you can't withhold them from seeing their mom and their dad.
Yeah.
Because again, the goal is reunification, which it should be. I'm not saying that we don't want that. We do want that. But going into it, you need to know this is part of it. And I remember in my journey, I was obviously very involved with this young kiddo and trying to get her involved with her family, being able to see her mom and dad. But being that her dad was incarcerated, like I really worked hard to make sure that I could go visit him regularly and take letters back from him to his daughter, and so that their relationship could keep moving forward. And that really paid off beautifully for her because when he did come out of incarceration and she was reunified with her family again, I mean, there was relational equity that was established during that time so that like she knew her dad missed her, he loved her, and she would write him notes back and I would take them and then he would write them to her. And it was a beautiful process, but I had to keep reminding myself in the midst of my schedule and fostering this kiddo that this is not just about her, it's about her family too. And
Yeah.
that can get really hard because in my situation, it was more of a positive, but I know in others that I've heard, it's it's very difficult when you're bringing in, for example, a medically fragile kid, and you know that there's been abuse in the home or there's been severe neglect, and maybe we disagree tremendously with the visitation rights for that parent, but yet they're still granted. And then now that parent is able to be with you in that room with that kid, or you know that that kid is not with you and they're in that room with their parent. And you're feeling like, man, why do they even have the ability to even be
Yeah.
their parent right now? Because
Yeah.
they've hurt this child so deeply. And that is what you're stepping into when you're putting your yes on the table. And now every story is different, but you are fostering the whole family.
So true. So true. I feel like that is the one thing, not one thing, but you get a yes, and then you have to be completely dependent on the Lord. And it is so hard in our flesh. And, especially when there's abuse involved and severe neglect,
Mhm.
those are so hard. And I've always, even in visits when maybe it's hard to love a parent, just had to pray diligently, like, Lord, give me something, because the hard part is, and I've been told this and preached to prior to this, but it is
Mhm.
so true. God loves these mamas and daddies just as much
Yeah,
as he loves our kiddos who have been severely neglected and abused. Those
right.
are his kids too, regardless of what they've done.
Yeah,
So I just have to pray, like, God, give me something for them, some empathy so that I can love them well and you
sure.
can speak through me. And he always does, even when it's hard and you're like, I do not think I
Yeah.
can even look at them because I'm so, I mean, it is just
Yeah,
anger.
it
I
is
mean,
hard. It is.
our heart wants to
Yeah,
defend these kids and you know they've been so wronged and
right.
you're so angry and rightfully so, but he always
Mhm.
does. He gives you something so that you can love them well and see him work in the situation. And a lot of times, like these parents really were because it's just this revolving door. Once upon a time, they were the child that maybe needed
Mhm.
someone to invest and love on them and break the cycle. We talk about that all the time at
Yeah,
our house for kids aging out. Like someone has to get off the cycle. We have to break the
yeah.
cycle somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It is brutally hard. And to act like the space isn't is just not truthful. And that's why we've heard this quote. I don't even know who came up with this quote. I thought I came up with it or you did. And then Chris Tomlin shot it off. I was like, well, maybe he came up with it. I don't know. So who knows who came up with it? But we always hear this quote going around where everyone's not called to foster care, but everybody's called to care. And that is so true. And I love that quote because I do believe that we're all called to do something because they're in our community, they're part of our school systems, part of our ball teams. They're part of the next generation of leaders. And God loves them. He cares for them. He died for them. He has such plans for their life, has such plans for their family. And many of them are in foster care really because of no choice of their own. And I'm sure some do come in with behavioral issues and things of that nature. But again, usually there's a lot of trauma in the home that they have experienced that have causing that trauma and that reaction in their life. And so when you have that space, we all can do something. And,
Yeah.
sometimes for some people it is for their something is that they can foster.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it is so essential that we ask the right questions. And
Yeah.
to your point earlier, to slow down in the process and really be able to kind of think through, how does my husband feel about this? How does my wife feel about this? How do my kids feel about this? And then start to get the practical information as well too. Okay, what is this
Mhm.
going to look like? And I the thing that can be a negative, especially if we're followers of Jesus and we lean into the Holy Spirit, is a lot of times we can just sometimes be a little naive and think, oh, it's just all going to work out because I'm doing what God
Yes.
wants me to do, and that's not true. Like it's not always going to work out, and there's going to be a lot of different things that you needed to ask that are very practical that are going to affect your family, going to affect this kid, and you need to know them so that
Yeah.
you can do fostering well and then you're honoring them well. And then we're not building a culture of like families that are coming in and all of a sudden, all we have is negative stories. And I think that's the
Yes.
challenge. It's like if we have half the amount of foster families that we need, and if we're on ramping new foster families and then they didn't ask the questions, they didn't take the time, and then they have a really tough experience. And of course, their neighborhood, their circles of influence are all going to be like, hey, how's it going, man? How can we help you? And then you're like, oh, it was awful. Like, my gosh, we're never doing it again. And, they're giving DCS a bad rap and they're just
Yeah.
can't believe what they got their family into. And then they just totally put it off the table. Then basically everybody else that heard that story, their ball teams, their neighborhood, their church are like, "Oh gosh, well,
Never
look
doing
at
that.
the Joneses and what happened with them. We're not doing that." Like, no way. And so really the point of this podcast, and is continually just giving resources, hope, and stories just to encourage people so that doesn't happen, so we can start,
Yeah.
like, mitigating some of those stories, turning those stories into
Absolutely.
exciting stories and hopeful stories. Sure, they still have challenges, but there's good things that are being said because we did our due diligence, especially in the beginning when we're bringing a kiddo in. Um,
Yeah.
Dead
I would
silence, Jen's like, "Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that was good. So good. No.
So good."
I would say if you are considering fostering and maybe you've not taken those steps yet, really, really just some tips for you. Trauma, 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 educate, read,
Mm,
podcast, listen, anything Karen Purvis, gold, read it.
mm,
Really educate yourself. Befriend a foster parent, like come alongside them so that you can see what
yeah,
life looks like. Cause, and it's like you said, everyone, may not be called to foster, but you're called to do something.
yeah,
Um, be find your village ahead of time. Talk to your
mhm,
friends, talk to people in your church. Hey, we're thinking about doing this. How can you help? Are you willing to bring meals? And if you're like me, I don't always like to ask for help, but don't get in the way of letting someone else be a part of this and be a blessing to you. Let them
yeah,
help find your village. I mean, I've met someone through that volunteers at the Bridge House. She saw me every week coming in with a baby
mhm,
strapped to me, and she keeps
yeah,
my kiddo every week. And it really, she'll never know how much it means to our family, but that is her yes, she may not be fostering, but she volunteers at the Bridge House and she supports my family so that we can do it and I can continue to work and do the things that I need to. So find your village, befriend a foster family, ask questions, read, educate yourself
yeah,
so that you can really, really be prepared to foster. Or maybe you realize, oh, this isn't for me, but I'm really, really good at doing this and
yeah.
helping support this family.
Yeah, dude, I love that. That's so good. And there's so many nonprofits, whether you're in Tennessee or you're not. I mean, you can find nonprofits in your area that are doing some type of foster care work. Or if you're in a church and you have church circles, I mean, find out who are foster families within your church so you can shadow them, you can be a part of them, offer respite care, something that you can do to kind of get a gauge on what does this look like so that you can be able to kind of navigate what this is going to look like for your family and taking them out to coffee. Hey, can I take you out to coffee? I heard you're a foster parent. I'd love to sit with you, just ask you some questions and get to know your space. What's it like? What's it not like? And then again, all with the goal of helping you be able to foster this kiddo well and still maintain health in your family as well too. I mean, that's the
Absolutely.
goal, and kind of pivoting these stories from 50% of foster families disrupting and not doing it anymore to having more success stories for sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I wrote something down. This
yeah,
is,
she's got a
like
one
our
liner.
this is
Watch
our
yourself,
one-liner.
ladies and
I'll
gentlemen.
leave you with this one. This is our and again, this is one of those quotes, I can't remember who said it,
Yeah.
but it stuck with me, and I always say, "Is our yes led by compassion or conviction?" And I think it's so important when you're asking all the questions. Do we feel this child? Do we have this sense of our yes to take them into our home? Is it because of compassion or conviction?
Mm, that's good. What's the one too that you always talk about? You can't love what you're not exposed to.
Yes. I can't remember which book that was from, but when we were getting involved in foster care, I'll have to look it up. I can't remember which book it was, but it was something that a foster family recommended to us just to
Yeah.
educate ourselves. But it says you can't love the orphan if you've never been exposed to the orphan.
Mm,
And I think it's that in so many families, it's so common for a wife to be called to foster and maybe the husband to be more reserved. And so that's kind of how we started too, just exposing ourselves. And then when you're exposed, you're like, oh yeah, like we
yeah.
have to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think it goes back to your other point too when you were talking about like um taking a foster parent out to coffee or getting
Yeah.
involved in their space or finding a nonprofit that's near you that's doing something in the foster care space and then getting you exposed to it to see if the Lord starts to kind of quicken your heart or prompt your heart to say, man, this is something we really want to do
Yeah.
to really help in that space. Yeah, that's really good. I
Yeah.
love that.
And you may be like, absolutely not. It is. I won't pretend like it's easy. It is
Yeah,
so it's worth it, but
yeah, yeah,
it's not. I mean, you do constantly have people in and out of your home, whether it's
yeah.
therapists, caseworkers,
Mhm.
people calling, I've got to see him today or tomorrow. It's the end of the month. And,
Right.
it's
And
always
it's not like you're
chaotic,
signing up
but
to be a foster parent forever either.
yes,
Like, I think a lot
yes.
of times people think like, "Oh, if I become a foster parent, then that means that I'm fostering the rest of my life. It's like that it doesn't mean that either. Like
No.
you might put your yes on the table and it might be just that season of one kiddo that comes in that you move forward with. And I know families who are like, man, we were just planning on doing doing it for a few years and then all of a sudden now they're in like the adoption process. And I'm
Yeah,
like, "Oh my
yeah.
gosh, that's crazy."
Absolutely, absolutely. So true.
So that you really never know.
You don't.
But I don't think you have to go into it either thinking like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life." I'm
Yes.
gonna be 92 and have like 3 kids
Me
by
too, and
now.
I have 500 kids.
That's right. I mean, by the time if you lived in 92, you and Scotty may have actually around fostered 500 kids. I think you guys are on like number 20 now or something
If
like
I
that.
had 500 kids, I definitely wouldn't live to see 92.
Just need to write a book.
They may take me out.
I know we've been in staff meetings before where, because again, we have our 17 and under house where kids are transitioning and, they're going and they're in foster care looking for a foster home for these kiddos. And then we have our transitional houses for kids that have aged out of foster care. And there's kids that come in through our 17 and under, and I can see Jen's face, and she's like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna call Scotty," and I'm like, "Jen, you are already like, I'll leave that to you guys." But oh my goodness, like, oh my god,
I
so
know if
funny.
it's so funny now he knows in my voice, so if I call and he's
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah,
"No." He's like, "I
yeah,
know what you want, where this is
yeah,
going, no."
yeah. I know it's always when our wives call us, and they're like, usually if it's a normal
So,
conversation, and they're like, "Hey, what's up?" Or if they call you and they're like, "Hey, honey, how's
"Hey
your
there."
day? What's your favorite coffee that I can have for you waiting at home? Is there something you want for dinner that we haven't made in a while?"
So true.
They're like, "All right, what do you want? What's going on here?"
It's so
Oh
funny.
my
Scotty
god.
wants a dog, and I'm like, "No dogs," and he's like, "No more kids." So,
Yeah.
he's like, "No more kids," and I'm like, "No more dogs."
All right, no more dogs, no more animals, no more children.
We'll call it a truce.
We're call it a truce. Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. No, but the need is real, y'all. And, talking about over 8,000 kids in foster care, half the amount of foster families that are needed. These are big questions. I hope it was helpful for anybody. And, honestly, you can always contact Jen or I as well, too, at contact@thebridgehousetn.org if you want to kind of just ask us additional questions, or maybe you want these questions. We can send you the PDF of them, get them to you so that you can have them on hand. But ask the questions. Do not just put your yes on the table and just be like, "Yeah, it'll all work out. We'll make it happen." I know it sounds heroic doing that. It sounds like you're full of faith, but honestly, it's you need to have some groundwork for what you're stepping into. Ask your family, listen to your kids. The Lord speaks through them, He guides them. And I think when, again, I love that passage of scripture, abundance of counselors, victory is assured. And when you bring everybody to the table and you unpack it, you can mitigate a lot of issues. And at the end of the day, you're just trying to serve this kiddo well. And that's a big deal. That's what it's all about. Jen, what do you think? Any last thoughts?
Think so. Yeah, I think if you're interested, like you said, reach out. We're happy to have conversations one-on-one. Reach out to your local DCS provider. That's another. We should probably do another podcast on that difference in a DCS home. We could go on and on and on.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
DCS and a
will.
provider. Yeah. So reach out. Get involved. Start the classes. Doesn't mean you have to take a kid tomorrow, but you can definitely start the process, befriend a family, do the things.
Yeah. So contact at thebridgehousetn.org. You can hit us up with any questions you have. If you want the PDF as well, too, we'll share it your way. Maybe you're not fostering or you're not going to, but you're listening to this and you're like, man, this would be great for maybe a friend of mine that is fostering. Or maybe you just keep it on hand for if you're like a missions director at your church or something like that, and you were like, hey, this could be helpful for in the future if someone did want to foster. And send that their way as well, too. But man, we love y'all. Jen, you're amazing. I'm excited for all the conversations that we have coming up. It's going to be great. We got some really good things that we're going to be talking about in this space. You'll hear from young adults that are aged out. You'll hear from caseworkers. Sometimes it'll just be Jen and I just talking about various different things that are happening in this space, which there's a whole world that is consistently going on. As Jen and I were texting back and forth today about some interesting things that kind of fell on our plate, but we're excited, and we will keep the conversation going. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
See ya.